Today I'm super excited to introduce you guys to Brian Berkowitz. You're gonna have to help me with your last name. Berkowitz. No Brian's here with us today, and I'm so excited to introduce you to him. He's a fantastic photographer. He's done photography for so many big name companies, Rolex, Gucci, amazing, and done a lot of residential work also with interior designers. So we have him on board today to talk about photography, branding, give you tips. I'm super excited about it. So in this brief presentation, we'll discuss how to design photography is a crucial part of any designer's branding and shouldn't be an afterthought when working on their brand and marketing, which is so important because you guys are selling, what you're selling isn't emotional. People are buying from you because they're making an emotional purchase. And Brian is just really good at creating a scene and an emotion from the photography and from the whole scene. So I'm super excited about that. And I want to just talk to you for a second about how, why that is so important for your overall brand. Because when I get people and they come to me and they want us to help them with their marketing and they don't have photography that is quality, it's really hard, if not impossible, to really get them to the level that they want to be at, right? Because we don't have anything to, show off. You guys are selling your work. You need to have beautiful photos in order to show off your work. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of just website before and afters, just to talk about it just for a second, and then we'll go into the tips and everything. So if everybody can see my slide deck here, this is a before of Tana, and this is after of Tana. So what we do is look at your photos, look at your work, and design the website so it shows off your beautiful work and tells that story, right? If you come to us and you don't have those photos, then it's impossible for us to tell that story. Think about how to show off an old couch versus a new couch. If you're gonna take a photo of an old couch versus a new couch, which one is gonna sell better? The one that looks shiny and pretty and new, right? That's what Brian is incredible at. And I'll show you a couple of other ones. Here is another one before, and here is after. So you're creating perceived perception of your business. Think about the quality of your business. This is the same company with the same work. If you were a client, would you buy from this company or would you buy from this company? The perceived value of this company is so much more than this one. And the difference is the photography. When we started working with her, she actually went and got some of her projects reshot. So it shows off her work. And if you were a customer, who would you trust to pay more for? right? You'd pay this client more if you were coming to this website versus this website. So I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna let Brian like jump in, and so you can learn about him and really learn like how to take better photos, how to hire somebody to take, you know, who to look for, like how to hire somebody that's a good photographer. So why don't you jump in, Brian? I'm super excited. I'm absolutely in love with your work.
Oh,
Like,
thank
it's
you.
beautiful. It's so gorgeous.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you at the home designer marketing team to everybody that I've been in touch with over the last few days for giving me this opportunity. Let me jump in and share my screen as well. And I hope you all can see, you can see that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start off telling you a little bit about what I do. I'm an architectural and design photographer. Pretty much my clients consist of architects, interior designers, and retail stores. I do a lot of retail stores throughout the country for different national brands. I'd like to say what I do is I help design and build professionals differentiate their brand and attract new clients by offering crisp, clean, and beautifully composed images that convey your creative vision. I'm based out of New York City. I'm on Long Island, about 15 miles east of New York City. So the majority of my work does take place in Manhattan proper, or out on Long Island, because we have the Gold Coast, which is a pretty nice area for designers, as well as the Hamptons out here. So kind of that triangle of New York City, the Gold Coast, which is like the Gatsby area, and the Hamptons area, where I make up the bulk of my work. As I think you mentioned, Deborah, I do commercial architecture, a lot of retail, residential, and as a hobbyist recently turned into revenue stream, I also do fine art, architecture, photography as well, which I sell prints as well, which I'll tell you a little bit about later on. I started when I was about 10 in this industry. That's me in about 1990, December of 1990. My father was a wedding photographer, so I started when I was 10, turning 40 this year. So I've been in this industry about 30 years. So kind of grew up in it. Here's a little bit of some of the clients, some of the national clients I do work for. Last year in 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, I shot 48 stores for Rolex throughout the Northeast. I go all over the country for Gucci, shooting their new openings. I'm actually flying out to Florida in about 4 hours for Gucci to do a shoot for them on a new store they're opening up in South Florida. I shoot Mazda dealerships, any type of interior, Santander, banks. I don't know if they have them where you guys are. We have them here on the East Coast, but a variety of different type of work for different types of clientele. Wall Street Journal in their real estate section, I shoot some properties for them as well. So a wide variety of different work and clients that I shoot for. Here's some commercial photography, commercial architecture. This is a local hospital for Northwell Health, which is the biggest medical group out here on the East Coast, with hospitals throughout New York City and Long Island. I think they have 6,000 or 7,000 employees working for them, including doctors and everything else. Some retail stores. This is a Bottega Veneta store out here on Long Island. So like I said, I do a lot of retail, luxury retail brands. Residential. This is the Gold Coast of Long Island, which I was telling you about earlier, the Gatsby area. So residential interior design photography. And I do some fine art stuff, which I've been doing for years as a hobby and recently turned into a revenue stream. This behind us is the Oculus in New York City, which was a recently designed transportation hub. Designed by Santiago Calastrava, who is a Spanish architect whose work, I think he brings on themes of skeleton and stuff like that in his work, and all his work looks very similar to this. And you know, I suggest, even if you're not familiar with him, go check out some of his work, because it's really phenomenal, and he designs buildings all over the world. But that being said, enough about me. Let's get right to it. And while I am a photographer and not a designer, I cannot speak specifically to some of the operational pieces related to being an interior designer, but I can speak about a specific challenge that I think each of you do face, or if you haven't yet, will face sometime in your career, because to a large degree, I face it too. And that problem is the challenge of creating or maintaining a brand that will allow you to distinguish yourself in a highly competitive marketplace. So I don't think what I do is any much different than what you do as far as being highly competitive, especially here in New York. I know there's designer and architectural photographers in every corner. You know, I know the same thing about designers here in New York, and I'm assuming where everyone's located there, you know, it's always highly competitive, especially now with what's been going on in the last year. People are shifting and pivoting to new careers and this and that. So it's a very highly competitive marketplace. So I want to talk a little bit about brands and branding. And I know there's a few of you here. Let me see if I can make this smaller for a second so I can open up the chat. And I would like to see if people want to throw into the chat kind of when they think of brand, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the definition of brand, and what's your thought process there? Don't be shy. There's only a handful of us here. All right, we have some shy people. It's all right. Let me ask you, Deborah, if you don't mind speaking out loud.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about brand.
So what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of brand? And
perceived value. Like, you know, what you're thinking is something's worth, and what somebody else is thinking something's worth might not be the reality of like what it really is worth. Or, you know, it's like creating, you know, I always think of brand positioning. We walk people through 3 steps. So brand positioning is, you know, really uncovering how they're different and then building out the brand assets, right? But the brand positioning is really what I think of branding. Like, how do you want to be perceived? How are people currently perceiving you? You know, is it an affordable business? Is it a luxury business? Is it, you know, what type of work are you doing? You know, how are you being perceived? And then how are you wanting to be perceived? And sometimes those are not lining up. So that's how I always see brand. But
okay, nice. So I would, you know, obviously what you said, let's see what Carissa says. I think brands as these things: memorable, stand out in the crowd, what makes you unique, etc. All part of your branding, 100%. So while there are many things, everyone can have their own interpretation of a brand. One of my favorites that come to mind is a quote by an American marketing guru. His name is Sergio Zyman, and he's done marketing and branding for many top international companies, including Coca-Cola. And let me show you what his quote is. And I'll leave it up here for a second. He says, branding is a container for a customer's complete experience with the product or a company. I'll leave it up here for another 5 seconds so everyone can.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just gonna pop in for a second. I definitely love that saying. And it is the container. And how are you gonna create, like, how are you gonna create that container, right? What are you gonna put in it to make sure that it tells the right story?
Yeah. Well, what speaks to me about this quote is that he uses at the end complete experience. And I think that's very crucial, rather than a series of marketing tactics, you know, such as brochures or logo or website. It's the entire experience that somebody, a client or a potential client, feels when they're speaking to you, dealing with you, working with you. It's the entire experience enveloped in this container. So, and this is kind of where I think your world as a designer and what I do as a photographer kind of intersect, because I feel that good photography and especially good design photography is a powerful tool and one that can greatly affect the experience that your prospective clients feel about you when they're looking to hire a new designer. Ultimately, the purpose of design photography is to generate this positive experience or an emotional connection or evoke a feeling with, if you will, in the viewer where they'll be prompted to either call you versus calling one of your competitors, or if you have a showroom, to go visit your showroom versus going to one of your competitors' showrooms. And I think your brand not only affects your prospective clients or your potential clients, but it also affects your current clients. Your current clients see that you're used to professional photography. It's a tangible example of you living up to that brand promise that you promised them, of doing everything you can for them, and that their designs are photo worthy. So think about how that affects your clients after you finish a project, where they see that the designs you completed for them are photo worthy and worth you having a professional photographer come in to shoot it, versus you walking around, for instance, hypothetically at the end of your project and taking some shots with your iPhone. It's a whole different branding experience, and that's part of the experience that the customer feels. And either way, that positive experience or that positive emotional connection that's felt by that prospective client or your current client gets associated with you. And that's the most important thing, that when they experience you, they're feeling positive and they have that emotional connection. So to give you a sense of this experience that I'm talking about, I want to show you, I think, about 4 or 5 photos. And as I go through the slides, and feel free to kind of throw it in the chat and tell me what you're feeling. Tell me that emotional feeling you get. Tell me that connection, and let me know what you're experiencing as I go through the slides. And I'll leave each one on for a couple seconds. That's the last one. Feel free to chime in if anyone wants to tell me what they're feeling emotionally, what their experience was like viewing these photos. Debra, feel free to chime in. We have a shy group here today.
Yeah, for sure. It almost feels like you're like in a tunnel or not really connected. Like,
I can go back if you want to and play them as you speak.
yeah, like this one, it doesn't seem like welcoming. Does that make sense? Like it just, it kind of seems far away in distance and like I'm not in the space. It doesn't feel like I'm experiencing the space.
Yeah, I see generic in the chat, heavy, sterile, narrow.
Mm-hmm. And the lighting on the bathroom almost makes it seem a little bit dirty, in the shower area.
Didn't feel inviting.
Yeah.
Well, as you notice, everything that you guys said are all negative experiences. These were shots that were provided to me by the designer that were taken the day before. Definitely looks like a novice shot. Well, these were shots that were taken by a designer that were taken the day before they brought me in to take the shots. Obviously, this person, brought me in, so I'm using these as an example. But it just goes to show you this is what they sent me the evening before my shoot, when I asked them to send me photos that they had of the designs. Now I'm going to show you the same exact rooms, stuff that I photographed. This was about 1.5 years ago, and I know it's going to be hard to, because you just saw 4 or 5 of these shots, but kind of, close your eyes and throw away everything and all your emotions that you just felt, and try to look at this from a clean slate. Here we go. That's the final one. All the same room. You can chime in now. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you feel emotionally, what type of experience you felt looking at these shots. Definitely more clean.
Yeah, somebody commented that it's clean. It feels like you're in the space. You know, you're experiencing the space.
Yep, that's exactly what Carissa said. Sarissa, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Feel like you're experiencing the room, clean in the details, more clean, cropping out some of the things that take away. Yep. And I'll go even further and I'll show you side by sides so you have an idea. Doesn't even look like the same room.
It doesn't. When I was looking through, you know, everything, I didn't realize at first this was the same room.
Yep. This is my favorite one, night and day. You know, this master bedroom has water views and you can't even see it in the first shot.
I also really noticed that a lot of their photos that they took, the befores, are really yellow. So the color doesn't look as clean.
Yes, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit later. Wow. This viewer says, wow, more of a curated experience to the viewer. All right, cool. So what you guys are seeing is all the comments that you're making on the more professionally taken shots are all positive and talk about the experience that the viewer feels emotionally. I feel like I'm in the room. The details look incredible. Wow, more of a curated experience, stuff like that. Right off the bat, you know, I'm not gonna dive into this too long, but you can see the difference that professional versus non-professional shots do make for your experience that the viewer is going to see when they're looking through your stuff. And if you want to use the word curating a designer to do one of their projects. I think there is a design. Yeah, Dawn, I don't disagree. Dawn says, I think there's a desire for a record of the whole room versus a tighter shot that can still tell the story. 100%. On most shots, we do show a wide room, but, you know, in a case like this, you know, for instance, the shot on my screen, the shower, toilet on the left, and a tub. I mean, that's the bathroom. So nothing I felt is missing. I can show you the office shot, for instance. In my opinion, you don't need to see the whole carpet. You see just enough to know that it's there. I like to use what's called implied space, meaning you don't necessarily have to show the whole something for a viewer to understand that it's there. They don't need to see an entire 8 by 10 foot rug to know that there's a rug there. You can see just a little bit on the bottom to know the design of the rug, and it all comes together, if that makes any sense.
I really love how you create a focal point.
Yeah, and I'll talk about
bring
focal
people
points.
in. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about focal points too, and you know, the next little part of what I'm going to speak about is basically, it's actually a design principle that the brand will automatically fill in what's applied. Exactly. Perfect. Yeah, Dawn, that goes along to what I just said, implied space. So I know some designers don't see the value. I hope I showed you the value in it, or I know that a lot of designers, especially newer designers, don't yet have the budget for professional photography for their branding. So what I want to do as I sort of wrap up my short presentation is just kind of go over some tips or photography tips where if you're in a situation yet where you don't have a budget yet, or you're not ready to go and hire a professional photographer, and you're going to use your phone or a $400 or $500 camera you can go and buy in Costco, whatever the case is. I'm just going to give you a couple little tips to make your work look better. So if you're going to go out and do it on your own, which as I spoke, I don't suggest, but if you're going to go and do that, at least you'll be producing better work, and you'll be on the start or beginning to at least kind of identify your brand a little bit with the work you're putting out. So let's go over some basic photography tips.
And Brian, I'd like to jump in and also
Sure.
say that your tips are also to help people like hire somebody. So, learning these tips can help you like look at photographers' work and decide if they're going to be a, good fit for your business.
No, for sure. Well, the first tip I'll give you, which I'll show you in a second, is the biggest rule of thumb. And if a professional photographer is not following this rule, they shouldn't be someone you hire. And that is proper perspective. And I'll explain that in a second. What that means is walls and beams were not designed by the architect to be slanted. Do not show them slanted. Make sure your lines are straight vertically. Make sure your lines are straight horizontally in a 1-point perspective composition. And what a 1-point is when the sensor of your camera is parallel to the back wall. So when you're looking straight onto something versus on an angle. So a perfect example of the first kitchen shot, you can see the walls on the left and right, everything is converging down towards the middle. On the second shot, all the vertical lines are all straight up and down. And that right off the bat is going to be the biggest differentiator between the work you're either doing on your own or what you're looking for in a photographer or someone that's calling themselves a professional photographer. If they have lines that are not straight like the ones on the left, steer clear. That's the biggest dead giveaway. And it's a simple fix. Basically, all you got to do is make sure your camera's straight and level. If you're shooting on your phone, for instance, and your phone is facing down, your lines are going to converge down, like my example. If your phone is going to face up like that, your lines are going to be converged up. If your phone is perfectly level, your lines in the room will be level. So if you're shooting on your phone, make sure that your phone is perfectly level, straight, and your phone should be parallel to the walls of the room. No architect that I know of designed their walls like that. Composition.
So let me add one more thing,
Sure.
Brian. It makes the room look smaller when when it's coming in.
Well, this is a different composition too. I mean, I'm obviously much closer on the shot on the right than I am on the left. And that kind of goes into my next, I'll answer your question with my next rule, which is composition. Avoid shooting ultra wide. And what I mean by that is phones in general have a tendency to be super ultra wide. And you don't need, I know someone spoke about shooting wide to tell the story. I don't think you need to shoot super, super wide to tell the entire story of the room, especially if you're looking at a shot like this. I mean, I think the shot on the right tells the story of the kitchen and the layout and the design of the kitchen perfectly, especially when used in combination with that other vertical shot I showed you before of the other side. Using the two together, you get a sense of the entire room and you don't need to shoot ultra wide. You can shoot wider shots, obviously. Sometimes when I'll go into a kitchen, I'll get one overall wide shot and then break it down into 2 or 3 details like the one on the right and the earlier vertical one facing the sink on the other way, on the left side. But no reason to go out and shoot ultra wide. Getting in closer will allow you to focus on some of the details and the features that you went out and you spent time working on, colors, textures, etc., all that stuff. To avoid shooting ultra wide, obviously you can always zoom in the phone, but what that's going to do is make your final image a little more grainy. So go out, and what I would suggest is look into some Moment lenses. Moment is a company that makes lenses for the iPhone, and I'll show you right here. I have one. It looks like this. It's a little tiny lens, and they cost about $125, something like that. So it's pretty inexpensive. It's a little lens like this. This is a 58 millimeter. So I don't know if that means anything, but phones like an iPhone, for instance, is roughly 24 millimeter. This is 58. So it's almost double the zoom in of the iPhone. And you will not lose any quality by the electronic zoom that most phones offer. And what you do, if you go buy a moment lens, you get a little phone case like this, you put it on your phone, and the lens literally just screws right into the case, and you're good to go. So go in, you take your pictures, hold it straight, and you're able to get nicer shots. And again, like I said, it's about 125 bucks. It's pretty cheap, pretty affordable, and you can go out and it'll, you know, there's really good high quality glass on it. It'll help you take some better photos. And one of those things that's good to just keep, you know, always have with you if you're going to go out and take some photos, even some before photos for yourself. You can see the difference, not shooting ultra wide. Yeah, you know, you lose a little bit of the window on the right, but that doesn't bother me. You see all the design details, which are the most important. Lighting. Next rule of thumb is lighting, which we spoke about a little bit earlier. Turn off all the lights in the house that add a different color temperature and use natural light. Now, lights come in a variety of color temperatures. You can get these tungsten yellow lights, daylights, LEDs are all different color temperatures. And when you start mixing different color temperatures in your scenes, you're going to get, like the bathroom shot I showed you earlier, you're going to get yellow walls. I can show you now. So here you have the natural light coming in from the window, the two windows on the left. You have the yellow lights coming from the sconces, which are sort of to the right behind the cameras. You can see them in, excuse me, you can see them in the reflection of the glass doors. Shutting those off will allow one light source, and you can color, your camera should automatically color balance for that one light source, and everything will be the proper colors. You can see on the shot on the left, the tub looks yellow, the floors look yellow, the walls on the right look yellow. They were not designed this way. They're not yellow. On the shot on the right, with one light source coming through, you know, the tub is white, the towel's white, everything that's supposed to be the proper color is the proper color. And it actually makes the color of the tile be where it's really supposed to be versus the left shot. And, you know, a major difference on the two shots is the lights from the LEDs, as you can see. But I don't feel personally that you need to show the light on the LED. You can still see the design of the chandelier. You can still see the design and what, you know, you attempted to achieve with your design on the chandelier without having the light specifically on. What distance you add the light to illuminate the shower? Why didn't I add the light to illuminate the shower? I could have added light to illuminate the shower. I felt like the tub was the focal point of the shot, and the chandelier was the focal point, and the wall. I mean, look at the wall. The wall is the focal point of the shot. I want the eye to go to one specific spot. I chose the wall in this specific shot. Could have went to the shower, but you know, what are you achieving by looking at the shower versus the wall? Not much, in my opinion. So that's where you can use your creative discretion, what you want the focal point to be in a shot. You know, if I wanted to do a shower shot, I would have done something a little different where I kind of brought the camera to the right and just focused on the shower and maybe seen a little bit of the tub and the chandelier on the left of the frame, just to kind of put it in perspective. Rule of thirds. And this is, we were talking, Debra, about focal points a little bit earlier. This is the final little tip I'm going to give you, which talks about focal points. Rule of thirds is a compositional rule, which is a guideline. It's not a hard, fast rule, but it's a guideline to follow, which will make your compositions look better. And the rule of thirds is basically taking a frame or a picture and breaking it down into 3 rows and 3 columns, vertical and horizontally. And then what that does give you also is 4 PowerPoint positions. We call the 4 positions where those lines intersect PowerPoint positions. So you have the 4 positions in the middle. And ideally, what you want to try to do is try to line up a vertical element in the shot with one of the vertical lines in your rule of thirds grid, or you don't have to line up everything, or horizontal lines with one of the horizontal lines in the frame, and try to land something where you want the eye to be attracted to in one of those 4 PowerPoint positions. So like an accessory or something like that. And I'll show you some examples. Here's an office shot that I showed you earlier. In this shot on the right, the the back part of the desk is lined up with that lower rule of thirds horizontal line. I have 3 items in PowerPoint positions, which is fairly rare, but if you can get them all, great. I have the piece of artwork on the back, on the upper left PowerPoint position, the letter opener on the lower right PowerPoint position, and the tray with accessories on the bottom left PowerPoint position. And it just makes it a more appealing shot because, you know, your brain knows where it wants the eye to go. Here's another example. If you can see, I have the right side of the refrigerator lined up with the right side vertical rule of thirds line, along with the pendant that's hanging down. It's all, and I purposely set my camera up there versus 1 foot to the left, for instance, because then that pendant would not have lined up properly with the side of the refrigerator. I also have, you know, right to the right of the range hood where that cabinet is lined up on the left vertical rule of thirds line. And then in the upper right PowerPoint position, we have that pendant coming in, and the bottom left PowerPoint position, we have that faucet coming in. So you don't need to try and fill every PowerPoint position. One is fine where the eyes can go, but you know, as you're about to take your phone, just try to think consciously, and over time it'll become routine or habit to try and do some of the, follow 1, 2, or 3 of these rules as best as you can, and will make your work significantly better. That's about it for my presentation. Here is some places where you can find me. BrianBerkowitzPhoto.com is my website. You can see some of the work I produce. Brian Berko on Instagram. You can also see, I post a few times a week, some new images and some stuff I'm working on. And Brian Berkowitz Art is where you can look at some of that fine art stuff I was telling you about earlier, where I have clients that are purchasing. I have a ton of designers that purchase for their clients that are designing new rooms. Everything is black and white. So if you know that type of look would match any one of your designs, you can go ahead and look at some of the prints. And I am offering everybody here 30% off for the next 2 weeks on any prints if you want to buy either for yourself, or if you have a client that you feel some of my work might fit what their design you know, is looking for, or might fit their theme, then go ahead and you can purchase a print for one of your clients. Use code HDM30 and you will get 30% off. And if you don't remember that code, just reach out to me and I will let you know about it. And that's it for my presentation. Let me stop the screen. I'm here if you have some questions or want to do some Q&A or just want to chat. I'm here for you. So
I'd love to hear, are people taking their own photos or are they hiring somebody? Maybe you could put it into chat, or if you have any questions. Or even, you know, what did you learn that you thought was really helpful? I know I took down some notes or just kind of thoughts. One is, I love how you create an emotion and create a focal point. So I'm also an oil painter.
oh,
and
nice.
I know that, in fact, I have one of my paintings in back of me. But
so do I. Right?
Nice.
Behind me.
I love it. Yeah, what you're doing is definitely art. And if you have too many focal points, you have no focal point, right? If you're not directing people to where you want them to view, like in that bathroom shot, if you lit up everything, then people wouldn't know where you're like directing their eye to go, right? Where you're really creating an emotion by guiding them through the photo and focusing on what you want them to focus on. And also, you don't
remember, sorry, Deborah, the brain is naturally going to be drawn to the brightest part of the image. So, and that's a good thing to kind of realize in the back of your head when you're going out and you're going to take a shot, that, you know, if you want to focus, I'm going to use for an example on a kitchen counter, but there's a huge bright window right behind you. No one's going to see the kitchen counter. They're going to see what's outside that window. Mm-hmm. So you might have to then go ahead and reshift your composition and maybe shoot it a different way, where you're making the eye naturally go to the brightest shot in the room. And that should be what you want the audience or your viewer to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think sometimes the mistake that people make is they want everything that they've done to be in the picture. And, you know, you're not really trying to show them everything that you've done. You're really just trying to give them a taste of what you've done and create an emotion that gets them to like want to schedule an appointment with you.
Exactly. You're trying to hit those emotional nerves in them where they're going to call you and not even look at anyone else. And sometimes the
Yeah.
full picture doesn't do that. Sometimes you need, which is why I said don't shoot ultra wide. Sometimes bringing them into the scene a little more will help develop that emotional connection.
So they feel like they're in the space. Just think about like if you're shopping for something and you're totally in love with it and you're emotionally connected to it, you're going to pay more for that. You're going to like buy that one thing. You're not going to go look somewhere else. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a car. It could be, you know, clothes. It could be who you hire for, you know, your project. It doesn't matter. If you fall in love with it, you're going to hire that person. You're going to pay them probably whatever it takes. You're going to find the money to hire them.
Sure. You know, and you know what the biggest tip is? Just work the price of your photographer into your budget and just have it covered. You know, design photography in the grand scheme of a full project is not that expensive. You know, obviously everyone has different rates no matter where you are in the country and where you are at their skill level. But, you know, even at the higher end of a design photographer, maybe $3,000, $4,000, like when you're talking about a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 project, like just work it into your budget and know that when the project's finished, at least you're covered and you're not taking that as a loss on your profits. So,
yeah. I would even say that even for the smaller end projects. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we follow like this book called The Profit First. And it talks about being sustainable no matter what size company you are. And I consider that as, you know, like you have to be taking good photos in order to market yourself, in order to get more work, in order to get paid what you want to get paid and need to get paid in order to stay in business. Right. So by like putting it off, thinking that you can't do it now, you know, you're also making it so, you know, are you really saving money? Or are you losing business? Right? Investing in doing it right the first time will bring in better clients that will help you reach your goals sooner.
No, for sure.
So that's my philosophy. And I also think that a couple things. One, like Brian said, you know, use a professional photographer. I always say to like write it into your contract, because a lot of people are like, well, my client, you know, wants to move into the space and everything. In order to get another project like the one that you just did, you really need to make sure that you have professional photos so you can use it to market yourself. So write it in your contract.
You're exactly right. If you don't have samples of that type of work, let's say you design a restaurant, for instance, and you know you're not going to get other restaurant work. You might have got lucky with one, or you know somebody, or whatever the case is. But if you're not showing restaurant work on your website or in portfolio, or at least have it to send out to new prospective clients, you're not going to get much restaurant work. So, you know, show the type of work you want to go after. You know, it's kind of, you know, I used to work when I was starting with a photography coach, and he basically told me, show the type of work that you want to be shooting. And it's no different with what you're doing. Show the type of work that you want to be designing. If you don't want to be doing residential and you want to be, you know, designing commercial, show commercial work. Do not show residential, because you're going to get the calls for the type of work you're showing. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And when we take people through our brand positioning, that's exactly what we're talking about. Is like, what type of work do you want to be doing? How can we tell that story? Like, in order to tell that story, I need photos, right? Because you need the photos. So write it into your contract, and that having it written into your contract brings up the conversation earlier. So you're not waiting until after the project is almost finished and then you're like, oh, I want to bring in a photographer. No, you've already had this conversation with your client upfront when they sign the contract. So they're expecting that they're going to be that, take that step. And then the next thing is making sure that you're selling your projects for enough so you can pay for that photographer and pay to market yourself moving forward.
Sure.
Make sure you're sustainable, where, you know, it doesn't mean that you're like taking advantage of a client. No, you're trying to be a real business by making sure that like you're supporting your business so you can stay in business. So you're here 5 years later, you know, when they call you in 5 years, you're still in business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see some comments came in. Let's take a look.
Perfect.
Dawn said it's not about the cost, but it's more so getting the space ready for photography and styling. So I think there's something to that. And that goes back to something that I see Carissa, sorry, said earlier about taking a step back. Remember something, obviously there's an emotional attachment to your project that, you know, you've spent, you know, usually months or sometimes even years on a project designing. But what you see in a 3D space when you walk into it is much different than what the camera sees on a 2D image. So a lot of times, you know, you'll style a house and I'll go and I'll set it up and I'll be like, you know, this has too many accessories. The eye doesn't know where to look. We have to take it. We have to scale down a little or something like that. So, you know, to go along with that, you know, if you're hiring somebody, trust the photographer, because you know, things might look different when you're in a 3D space versus a final 2D image. And, you know, the photographer should know how, you know, the room is going to be best styled for shooting. You know, part of my process, I like to say I have like a 4-step process when I shoot. And the first is just getting the angle and the composition. The second part of the process is the styling, and that takes the longest part. You know, an image can sometimes take me 30 minutes to 60 minutes to shoot one shot, and that's solely because of the styling. If I have to move a table 3 or 4 inches to the left, and it might look in the perfect spot when you walk into the room, but the camera sees it differently because, you know, if I put my camera at 4 feet, but the average person sees it at 5'8", 5'9", it's a whole different perspective, and things have to be shifted around when something is looked at a different perspective. So, you know, I could spend 20 minutes, a half hour, just not necessarily styling, but shifting things around, moving some furniture. You know, you might have too many pillows on a couch. Let's take it back because I don't want the eye to flow through the room, not get stuck on all those pillows you have on the furniture, stuff like that. So, yeah, to go with what Sarissa was saying, you know, it's hard to take a step back, but, you know, trust your photographer. You're hiring them for a reason. They're professionals. They're good at what they do. And, you know, you being on set with them does make their job easier. I go to shoot sometimes where there's nothing set up and ready, and I have to spend an hour and a half styling because they weren't prepared, you know? So, you know, it does make the job a lot easier. When I do some of my retail store shoots, like, you know, what I have tomorrow in Florida for Gucci, I'm going in and there's been somebody from their visual merchandising team there all week styling the place. So when I go in tomorrow, they don't want me touching anything. They don't want me doing any styling. I just go in and they want it shot as is because they spent the entire week preparing it to look like that. And then we're going to go out, they're going to use these photos for marketing the new store. They want the photos to look how the store looks. Now, I might go in and I might have to shift the bag 2 inches to the left because the way the sun's coming in the window, it hits it in a bad spot, whatever the case is. And they're okay with that, but they don't want me, you know, moving bags or moving clothing, moving a rack to the other side. They have an interior designer on staff, Gucci, that designs all their stores. They don't want me competing with him or changing what he's doing. So yeah, trust your photographer.
So Brian, would you like talk a little bit about different types of photographers, like who they should hire, like a photographer that specializes in residential, you know, could they use like a real estate photographer, or what's the difference between shooting for
Sure.
interior design and
No
real
problem.
estate?
And I just want to answer Sphera's question about rates and availability. Just email me and I can be in touch with you about all that stuff. I'll put my email in the chat just so you have that, but I don't want to get into that now and waste everyone's time. I'm talking about availability and pricing. So real estate photography is along the same vein as design photography. I started my career shooting built environments as a real estate photographer. I did it for many years, but it's a little bit different. When you're trying to sell a house, most people want to see, it kind of goes in the opposite of what I said before, ultra wide or as wide as possible, because they want to, first of all, the agents want to show the houses looking bigger than they are. And a prospective buyer wants to see how big a room looks. When you're doing design, it's the complete opposite. You're not selling somebody a room, you're selling somebody a design, you're selling the textures, the details, the accessories, the furniture, the paint colors, all that stuff that went into the room. They don't, a prospective design client doesn't care if the room was an 8x10 or a 30x40 foot room. They care how you're going to put the whole room together and how you're going to coordinate all your colors and all your textures and all your details. So that's probably the biggest factor between a design and a real estate photographer. You're going to spend a lot less money with a real estate photographer. Keep that in mind. But part of the difference is, and I'll just give everyone a quick 2-minute understanding of the way commercial photography and licensing works, is if I go out and I shoot for, well, let me preface it with, the photographer always owns the copyrights to the image. That's a law created by the United States government. It's the United States copyright law enacted in the 70s. The person who creates the piece of art, it doesn't necessarily have to be photographer. Debra, for you, in your circumstance, it's your paint. You own the copyright to that painting over your right shoulder. Nobody else can assume the copyright of that. Nobody else can legally sell copies of that without a usage license from you. It's against the law, and it's a federal law too. It's not just a local state law. So essentially, when you hire me for a shoot like this, or even a real estate photographer for a real estate photography shoot, they're paying you for your service. And then on top of that, you're paying them for a usage license, a license from them, because they're the copyright owner, to use the images for the usage that you discuss or outline. Real estate, it's very simple. When I used to shoot real estate, I used to give the agent a license to use the images for the marketing of the specific property for the duration that agent had the listing. So for an example, if an agent loses a listing after 6 months because they couldn't sell it and a new agent comes on board, I am well within my rights legally to call the new agent and say, hey, I shot these, I own the copyrights. Are you interested in licensing these images so you can use them for marketing? The new agent is not legally allowed to use those images without a usage license from me. And it's the same thing. It's not any different for design photography. If you hire me or any other photographer for that matter to go out and shoot one of your interior design projects, the photographer still retains the copyrights of those images forever, unless they contractually transfer ownership of copyright to you, which can be done without a problem. And ultimately, what the photographer is giving you is a usage license for you to use those images in whatever they outline. Just for an example, my typical usage license for designers is website, portfolio, social media, editorial, and usually a quarter-page regional print ad. So, if you're going to print an ad in a local interior design magazine, up to a quarter of a page. If you want to go and print a full-page ad in Dwell, you need to purchase a bigger usage license for me. And the reason it works like that, pricing is based on your usage, because if you're going to put a full-page ad in Dwell versus a local small regional magazine, that image has a lot more value to you than it does if you're just keeping it local, or if you're using it internally for internal collateral, whatever. So part of the way pricing structures work from a design photographer standpoint or an architectural photographer is it's based on usage, and the more usage you want, the higher the price might go. Especially if there's a lot of people involved. Part of my pricing model is cost sharing. And what that does is I allow multiple vendors on a project to come in and cost share. I'll just give you numbers hypothetically. Let's say it costs $1,000 to have me come out and shoot. I'll use that as an easy example. For an additional 25%, I allow the cost share with an additional vendor, and they will get the license. So let's say you hire me to come out for a shoot for $1,000. And then you tell me, oh, the general contractor also wants the images and they want a usage license as well. I charge 25% more. So I'm making $1,250 now. And then the two of you split the overall cost, ultimately saving you both money. So what that does is it allows other people to come in and take advantage and get licenses on those images as well. So they can also use them for marketing. And obviously I make more money. I'm giving licenses to more people. But once the reason I charge that extra 25%, and I know some of you might be thinking, well, you're paying me anyway for shooting. Why can't we just all use them? The value of those images and providing goes up when other people start using them. So I think I got off a tangent, but I hope
I think it was really good information and a way to make the photography more affordable. Because if they get like a contractor on board and they could split the cost.
Architect, anyone on board, it's endless. It's endless. You can, your local tile company, if they're interested in it, anybody that might be, that might find the images useful, get them on board. And the more people you have on board, it's a win-win for everyone. I make more money and everyone's cost goes down. So, I've had a situation where I brought 8 people on board and 8 people split the cost. And it was, I think, a 20 image shoot. So it was a 2-day shoot or a day and a half shoot. And everyone paid like $500 or $600. It was incredible. So
that's great. And John has another question.
Yes, Dawn, unfortunately, that's the way the law works. Dawn asks, am I allowed to grant usage rights to anybody else if you're the only one paying for the shoot? Legally, yes, I can grant usage rights to anyone I want. If a photographer is not going to sell those rights, then they're just losing money and they're literally throwing money in the garbage. But because there is value to that. If another contractor is going to use them for their marketing, there's value to those images. So, but legally, yeah, I mean, the photographer owns the copyright. They can technically do whatever they want with them. You as a designer, unless you are specifically transferred ownership of copyright, you just have a usage license to use them for whatever that license covers, that agreement covers.
Do you find that that's an issue very often?
There's a lot of copyright infringement. It happens all the time. I'm in litigation now with a company, which I'm not going to mention, but they're a national tile manufacturer. And I did a shoot for an interior designer, which was featured on dwell.com. And it did feature tiles from this tile manufacturer. And they put them on their site on the page for that specific tile. And my attorney sent them a cease and desist letter with a demand, because the way it works is I'm entitled to 2 things. Once my images are registered, I have to register everything I shoot with the United States Copyright Office. It has to be registered. I do it every quarter. I register every image I've taken in that quarter with the United States Copyright Office. It's a process, but it protects me. And ultimately what happens is if that tile manufacturer starts profiting off my image without a usage license, they're essentially making money off my work without having a license to use it. So in a situation like that, where my images are registered, not only am I entitled to actual damages, which was what it would have costed them to license those images for me, but I'm entitled to statutory damages, which is a percentage of the profit they make using my images. So, and what that number is, there's no way, that's up for the judge to decide if it goes to trial unless it's settled. But, that's what happens. So it's, I'm not trying to scare anybody here, but, it's a serious thing and something that, you should consider before you start giving everybody your images and stuff like that.
And we, just so people think about it, I don't know that it's a problem here, but we always recommend for interior designers to not use stock photos, not use photos that they find on the internet.
No, that's
Wouldn't
against the
be
law.
surprised.
That's against the federal law. Do not do that.
We've had so many people that I've talked to that come in and I'm like, where did you find that image? And they're like, oh, I just got it off the internet. I'm like, you can't use that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do that, you're better off just taking your own phone photos, because
Yeah,
you're opening up yourself
absolutely.
to too many potential problems if you get caught, and
Yeah.
it can be
And it's
a
not
really
as,
costly disaster. Yeah.
it's not as much in this space, it's some of in other industries. But yeah, copyright is really important, you guys to pay attention to. And even with your marketing material, we've actually had 2 other agencies completely copy our whole website. So even one of them, the design and everything, like the whole thing, content, everything. So it doesn't happen very often, but it does. You know, you just have to protect yourself and make sure you're following the rules. I think that's the big,
Sure.
you know, and
Don't say
maybe
no
have a
more.
conversation with, I think the big lesson or thought that I got out of this conversation was, if you guys are going out there and, you know, you have a client, it's going to be a really nice job, try to get other people on board to save in the cost of the photography, you know, upfront. Start having those conversations with tile companies, contractors, architects, like whoever you're working with, and split the cost. And that's going to make a really big difference.
Sure. And to answer you, Dawn, I hear you. I agree with you 100%. I don't know, Dawn is saying how designer's work is not really, I guess the intellectual property on a designer's work is not really copyrightable, maybe because there's nothing tangible that they're copywriting. But, you know, I don't disagree. You know, there is something to your designs and people can copy it. Using work without your permission or proper attribution. I mean, proper attribution is you know, getting credit for your work is great, but getting credit doesn't pay my bills. So at the end of the day, you know what I mean? You know, credit's fine and dandy, but I don't need credit. I need to be paid for the work I'm producing. And yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. Yeah, I think there should be a way to be able to, I don't know, trademark or copyright your designs and protect it. So.
Yeah, I would say that I think that it's about building a relationship with your photographer, getting to know them, having these conversations with them. And so you can really feel like you can trust them, and you're, you know, just having an open conversation about it, which I think is important. Because there's a lot of ethical things that, you know, me and my team, we follow, and I know other agencies don't follow them, right?
Sure.
So it's just about, you know, making sure that you have those conversations with people so they know what type of company you are. You learn about them, you build their relationship. When you're interviewing photographers, ask them those questions. How would you handle this situation? Mm-hmm. You know, and
that's a way Dawn can try and achieve what she's looking for. And I know there's no right answer, because that's just the way the federal law is set up. But Dawn, you can try and use the photographer as a way to try and curb some of people that are infringing on the photographer's copyright. If you see some of your designs posted in places where they shouldn't be, reach out to your photographer and let your photographer do that work for you. Let the photographer know, hey, I saw this image posted here. Did you give them a usage license? And obviously if the photographer did, there's nothing you can do. But if they didn't, let the photographer go after them. And that's the way you can try and at least use the way the law is set up to your advantage, because it's not, I guess, right the way you're explaining it. And I agree with you, but it's the way it is. And I can't change federal law. So use a photographer as a way to try to go after these people that are stealing your designs online.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do get the fact that, like, as an interior designer, like, you're also creating, you know, being creative, and it's your work. And I definitely get that. But there is laws in place to just protect people, sure, you know, and businesses.
Patricia asks, I paid a photographer for shooting some photos, but she hasn't given me a release yet. What should I ask for? just ask for a license agreement, usage agreement. Doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be if they have one, but I mean, as long as you have something in writing that says you can use your photos for this and this purpose for a specific duration of time, then you're good to go. So just have them send an email that says, do I have something I can share? Let me see if I can find something. Have an email that says, you know, you're allowed to use this for this purpose, this purpose, this purpose, this purpose for duration of time, whatever it is, perpetuity. Let me see if I can pull up something quick that I have here.
And I know that we're going over on time here, and Brian, so we're going to end in a couple minutes. We'll just answer a couple other questions.
Sure.
If people are wanting, interested in transforming their brand, feel free to book a consult with me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. Definitely like having photography that is high quality and a brand that's telling your story and showing off your work can definitely help you attract the clients that you want and get paid more.
Well, I just threw something in the chat for Patricia. This is not what's in my actual contract. It's a little more in depth, but this is something basic. If someone just needs a quick usage license, just to be able to, let's say you're submitting it to Dwell and Dwell needs a copy of usage license just to make sure you can legally use them. I'll just throw this together for them so they don't have to send over a whole 2 or 3 page contract, something like this, you know. So if you're worried, just, you know, ask your photographer to just fill in those blanks and just send it over so you know you're covered.
Did you put that in chat?
Yeah. Do you not see it?
I'm not seeing
no,
it.
yeah, it looks like it went directly to Patricia for some reason. Sorry. Let me send it.
No problem. No problem.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Does anybody have any additional questions or thoughts? Did they enjoy today? Conversation?
And if you have any follow-up questions, just, you know, email me, or you can find me on Instagram, just DM me and I'll be happy to chat. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for your time. And
no problem.
I just love your work. Your work's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
It is definitely a piece of art, all of it. I definitely, you know, it's very emotional and it just gives you a really good feeling. I think it's
thank
important.
you, and thanks for having me. And it was a pleasure chatting with, virtually chatting with everybody on, on the chat.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we'll talk soon. Bye.
Take care.